The showdown with Pharaoh and an entire nation walking out of slavery. It's the story of the Exodus, how the Israelites were freed from Egypt. It has everything: injustice, courage, miracles, stubbornness, and a God who won't ignore the cries of the oppressed. Let's walk through it together in plain language. The story takes place in Egypt, one of the most powerful civilizations of the ancient world. The Israelites, descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, had been living there for generations. At first, under Joseph, they were welcomed. But over time, a new Pharaoh rose up who did not know Joseph, and things changed. The Israelites multiplied. Their population grew. Pharaoh got scared. He thought, if these people keep growing, one day they might join our enemies and fight against us. So he turned them into slaves. They were forced to build cities, work in the fields, and do back-breaking labor. The Bible says their lives were made bitter with hard service. On top of that, Pharaoh ordered that every baby boy born to the Hebrews should be killed. That's the setting: a powerful ruler, a crushed people, a God who seems, at first, very quiet. But God had not forgotten. He heard their groaning. He remembered his promise to Abraham, and he began to move. This is where Moses comes in. We saw earlier how Moses was saved as a baby, grew up in Pharaoh's house, killed an Egyptian while trying to defend a Hebrew, and then ran away into the desert. There, God met him in a burning bush and said, "I have seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out. I have come down to rescue them. So now, go, I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people out." Moses was full of excuses, but in the end, he went. Now, in our story, he returns to Egypt with his brother Aaron as his spokesperson. Moses walks back into the land he fled from, this time not as a prince, not as a fugitive, but as God's messenger. He and Aaron go before Pharaoh with a simple command from God: "Let my people go, so that they may worship me in the wilderness." Pharaoh's reply is cold: "Who is the Lord, that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." In other words, your God is not my God. Why should I listen? Not only does Pharaoh refuse, he makes things worse. He orders that the Israelites must make the same number of bricks as before, but without being given straw. Their workload increases. They're beaten when they can't keep up. The people blame Moses. Moses turns to God and says, "Why have you brought trouble on this people? You haven't rescued them at all. It looks like everything is going backwards." But God answers, "Now, you will see what I will do to Pharaoh." And then the plagues begin. Up to this point, every plague has been a warning shot. Now comes the most serious judgment of all. God tells Moses, "I will bring one more plague on Pharaoh and on Egypt. After that, he will let you go." He instructs each Israelite family to choose a lamb without defect. On a specific night, they are to kill the lamb, put some of its blood on the doorframes of their houses, roast the meat, and eat it with bitter herbs and unleavened bread. Eat in a hurry, dressed and ready to go. God says, "On that night, I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn, both people and animals. I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are. When I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt." It's intense. This isn't about Israel being morally perfect and Egypt being uniquely bad. It's about God making a distinction based on his promise and the sign of the blood. That night, what God said happens. In every Egyptian household, from Pharaoh's palace to the prisoner's cell, the firstborn dies. Even the firstborn of the livestock. The Bible says there was loud wailing in Egypt, for there was not a house without someone dead. But in the homes with blood on the doorposts, the destroyer passes over. This moment becomes known as Passover, a defining event for Israel remembered every year. That night, Pharaoh finally breaks. He calls Moses and Aaron and says, "Up, leave my people, you and the Israelites. Go, worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds, and go, and also bless me." The Egyptians urge the Israelites to hurry and leave. The Israelites gather their families, their animals, their unleavened dough. God had told them to ask the Egyptians for silver, gold, and clothing, and the Egyptians, eager for them to go, give generously. The slaves who had been abused and beaten for generations now walk out free, carrying wealth. The Bible says about 600,000 men on foot, plus women and children, left Egypt that day along with many other people who joined them in large flocks and herds. They begin their journey into the wilderness. God goes ahead of them, a pillar of cloud by day, a pillar of fire by night. He leads them not the shortest route, but the safest one for their hearts. The story of the plagues and the Exodus often gets told as if Pharaoh is done after Passover, but he's not. After the Israelites leave, Pharaoh changes his mind again. He says, "What have we done? We've let the Israelites go and lost their services." He gathers his army chariots, horsemen, soldiers, and chases after them. The Israelites find themselves trapped. Pharaoh's army behind them, the Red Sea in front of them. They panic. "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die?" They tell Moses, "It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." But Moses says, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still." God tells Moses to stretch out his staff over the sea. All night, a strong wind blows. The waters part. A path of dry ground appears, with walls of water on both sides. The Israelites walk through the sea on dry land. Pharaoh's army charges in after them. When the Israelites make it to the other side, God tells Moses to stretch out his hand again. The waters crash back together, covering the chariots and horsemen. The army that once terrified them is gone. That day, the Bible says, the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians. The people saw what God had done and put their trust in him and in Moses, his servant. So what do we do with this big, dramatic story of plagues and Exodus? A few key things stand out. First, God hears the oppressed. For years, the Israelites cried out under brutal slavery. It probably felt like no one was listening, but God had heard every cry. He had seen every beating, every injustice. The plagues are not random acts of aggression. They're God's response to a long-standing, hard-hearted oppression. Second, God gives many chances. Pharaoh is warned again and again. "Let my people go." Plague. Relief. Hard heart. Repeat. He could have listened early. He could have humbled himself. But he doesn't. The story shows how a hard heart can become even harder when it keeps saying no to God. Third, God makes a way where there is no way. From the blood on the doorposts to the path through the sea, God provides ways of rescue that no one could have predicted. The Israelites didn't escape Egypt because they were strong or clever. They escaped because God stepped in. Fourth, freedom is not just out of, but into. God doesn't just free them from slavery. He frees them for something: to worship him, to become a holy nation, to live in a new land. Real freedom isn't just doing whatever you want. It's being able to live the way you were created to live. Fifth, the story still speaks today. You may not be a slave in Egypt, but you might feel stuck in habits, in fear, in people-pleasing, in systems that crush others. The Exodus story says, God sees, God cares, God confronts injustice, God can lead people out, sometimes through confrontation, sometimes through long processes, but always with a heart to rescue and restore. The 10 plagues and the Exodus are more than just ancient drama. They're a picture of a God who is powerful, patient, and passionate about freeing people from whatever holds them captive. And just like the Israelites, sometimes the only way forward is to stand still, trust, and watch for the path that God can open up, even through the sea.